Here's pompous David Cameron, sent out to the Today programme to try and gaslight the electorate that Rishi Sunak is doing well in his election campaign and that he's worth your vote. What's interesting is that this is against a backdrop of a recent study that shows trust in politicians is at an all-time low. Well, let's take a listen.
Well, I'm very sad about that because I think it is important that people trust what politicians say and politicians do their best to deliver on the promises that they make. I think this is not an excuse, but I think one of the things that's changed so much is the nature of media and the nature of social media. I mean, if you take things like Twitter, it is extraordinary the bile and unpleasantness that you have on some of these platforms, often from people who are doing it anonymously. And I think social media has fractured our politics in many ways. I always tried in my own way to, be careful about the promises I made and to stick to those promises. I suppose one of the reasons. I don't normally start interviews talking about the referendum on Britain's membership of the EU, but that was an example of a promise clearly made many years before an election and a promise clearly kept. And I think it was. I'm really happy
you've brought it up, though, because actually Brexit, forces unleashed by that whole process, unleashed demons, actually, to quote your former communications director, Sir Craig Oliver. It's interesting because Brexit came up in this same study. Almost 6 in 10 people would almost never trust politicians to tell the truth when in a tight corner. And 8 out of 10 voters say Britain's system of governance needs to be improved quite a lot or a great deal. And to bring it straight to Brexit, it suggests disillusionment over Brexit among Leave voters is one of the main reasons for the collapse in trust. Now, you may stand by calling that referendum saying a promise was kept. However, what's happened since under successive Conservative prime ministers is something that you started, and I wondered how you cope with that.
Here's the thing about the referendum. Cameron gave his word that he would stay whatever the outcome to steer Brexit in the right direction. But as soon as the results came back and people had voted to leave the EU, he jumped ship. How about that for trust? Now listen to him ducking any responsibility for unleashing Brexit.
Well, Brexit obviously brought about a huge change in the UK and did create, massive turbulence in our politics. And there's no doubt about that. There's no denying that. But what this election is now about is who do you trust to take the country forward? And I thought last night we saw actually a very interesting contrast. On the one hand, Keir Starmer saying, when asked, why did you say Corbyn would be a great Prime Minister? He said, well, I said it because I didn't think Labour were going to win. Now, that is the opposite of restoring trust. I mean, he was not telling the truth to us then.
I've asked you a question that you've avoided. I've asked you about how you cope with what's happened with the plummeting of British trust in politicians. And I asked you about something that you started, just to finish this point, and you immediately went to talking about this election and whether people can trust Sir Keir Starmer or not.
Click here for Mick Lynch shooting fish in a barrel.